But this is a really great example of university-school partnership. And so I'm super excited about this because it's teachers making change in terms of teaching practice. And I think that's the research I think that's going to be really pivotal and really important. So we have a team of teachers that are going to present. I'm Jeannie Fain. And then we've got Libby Barker, Lucinda Burris, Josh Weber, Miss Lisa Bruce, Emily Reed, and then Franklin Bennett, and we're all going to talk about comprehension across content areas.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate that very much. Last spring, I received a phone call from Dr. Candace McLean, and she offered me a wonderful opportunity, and it's called the Lipscomb Academy Research for Teaching and Learning Fellowship. And I didn't know exactly what that was at first, but after meeting with her and bringing her several ideas that I wanted to focus on for this year, we finally settled on my number one choice, which was comprehension. And after really sort of problem solving through that, I was introduced to Dr. Jeannie Fain, who is my teacher and partner in this fellowship, and we sort of went through a history of the school and talked a little bit about what we were doing in the middle school and why this was one of my important problems in the middle school. And as an administrator, what I had found was I was very unhappy year after year with my achievement test scores. I have wonderful faculty, and there's quite a bit of rigor in our middle school, but our comprehension scores continue to not look what I thought that they should look like. So together with Dr. Fain, we came up with our guiding research question. I want to read that to you. I want to make sure I get it completely right. What instructional strategies can teachers in content area classrooms use effectively to increase comprehension and classroom achievement? Using that question to guide our plans, we sat down with the entire middle school faculty in small groups and worked with them, interviewing them about their reading experiences and their comprehension experiences in their own lives and in their teaching practice. And what we found was, and it was quite a huge revelation for me, was that in their teacher education experiences, they had not received a lot of instruction about how to teach comprehension. Using that information as a base, we launched into our first Power of Professional Development on questioning. And you will see that these are the areas that Dr. Fain took us through in our first professional development. She worked with our teachers on these areas. Then we gave them an assignment. And the assignment was to go back to their classrooms, video themselves, and using questioning techniques that had been given to them by Dr. Fain, and then work with a peer, getting some feedback. And that's been a very revealing sort of moment for them, I think. And then they used a rubric that Dr. Fain gave them to sort of reflect and analyze on how they have done with that. This is a wonderful opportunity for them, but we're all learning together. I'm learning, the teachers are learning, and the students, their achievement is going to be impacted as well. I think one of the best things that I've noticed so far with working in the classrooms is that I can already see student achievement increasing, and it's an immediate thing. And because I've really never been a part of a collaborative relationship like this that's based on research and best practices, I'm amazed at the difference in just going to professional development, come back and trying something, to this, which is so pervasive. So we're going to start with 5th grade with Ms. Lucinda Burris, and she's going to go over her experiences.
And for the whole 20 years that I've been in middle school, I've taught language arts, and I've always tried to really focus on reading comprehension. I think that a lot of times we teach our children to read, but then we don't continue that process as they get to middle school and help them learn to really comprehend larger texts. And so I've always tried to focus on ways to help middle schoolers comprehend. So I'm excited about this opportunity, excited about trying to apply some of these things. One of the things I find is that it's really important with all students, but certainly with younger students like this, to find different kinds of literature that hook them, that make them care what they're reading. But with this process, then we also need to think about, but is that going to lend itself to asking those questions? Is it going to give us the opportunity to have those conversations? So we've already this year used a variety of things. We read mystery stories. We're reading biographies right now, and the clip I'm going to share with you of my students in a minute is from that study. We'll start this Among the Hidden novel in just a couple of weeks, and we'll do several novels this year. And we do nonfiction, like things like Scholastic News. And they each provide different kinds of conversations, so they help us build these skills. One of the things I see with fifth graders is that they're just at the very beginning of this journey. Once in a while I see a little spark that I go, oh, there it is. That's what we're going to build on. But we're not there yet every day, and we're just working along toward that goal. As we are working on this, I always talk to my boys and girls, especially in this first part of the year, about the things good readers do, because some of us just find those things on our own. But some students, and they're usually the ones who say, I don't like reading, have not figured out that they should be making a movie in their head while they're reading, or that they should be wondering what's going to happen next, or any of these other skills. So we work on those, and we do a lot of modeling in the beginning of the school year that hopefully then leads us to a place where the students can be more independent. So we start the year with a lot of read-alouds and a lot of class discussions. So here is a little group of my students talking about the Louisa May Alcott biography. Is the publication of Little Women a turning point?
Yes. It sold out and
Because she
pre-sold
started
out.
getting money.
And then she started making sequels and
Pre-sold
Right.
out.
Pre-sold, yes.
She got interested in her books and started writing and wouldn't stop.
Okay, I'm going to let Will say something because he hasn't gotten to say much yet.
The part where she was hired to go to the thing to work there for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it was going to be a nice job, and then she ended up getting less than she thought she would, and she got the hard work instead of the easy work.
Okay, and you think that's a turning point too?
Yes.
What did that change for her?
It changed how she felt and what she decided to do to get money.
Okay, it did. That's a good point. All right, Bella, one more on this. I think it's really fun to ask those deeper questions with fifth graders, but it always makes me kind of grin the way they answer them. And, rubbing your nose while you're being videotaped and all that. But you can see that the wheels are turning. He's thinking about the text he's read. He's thinking about what all these experiences, all this information means. So that's step one. We hope to move to next, especially as we start to get into our novel studies, is reading responses, where instead of having this group discussion where everybody may not get to participate, instead we generate some questions and they write about those questions, so I get every single child's response to that. So we've modeled it in the beginning. They get to see what I say, what other students say. Now they have to write their own response and be more independent. And we use a lot of different tools for that. We do blogs, we do journals, we do quick writes, exit tickets, all those kinds of things. Those don't have to be lengthy, but they need to be a good solid question that makes them really have to think about what they've read that day. And then our end goal is that we can put them in student groups where we might give them a couple of questions to spark the discussion, but then that conversation is going to lead to their own questions. And they're going to just be more independent with the whole process and question themselves what they're reading. Question themselves all the things that they are coming across in this literature.
Growing up and even through college, a lot of my history teachers presented the material to the class in kind of a stand-and-deliver fashion. With little discussion, kind of rolled through the class, not really pausing long enough to even see if anybody had a question. Even today, that's probably the method of teaching that many history teachers would default to if left to themselves. However, having learned what critical questioning does in my class, I realize the benefit it has in my classroom. Not only do students learn the material, but they are learning along with me how to ask questions. It does take a conscious effort on my part to integrate these critical questions into the lesson. I'll show you an example of that now. Why do you think it might have been called the French and Indian War then? If I just told you it's between the British and the French, why was it called the French and Indian War?
Does the Indians help?
Okay, good. The Indians helped.
During
Who did the Indians
War in
help?
the United States, the Confederates
The French?
were where?
British, both are right. That's right. Help the French and the different Indian groups help both sides. So that's what we're talking about, the French-Indian War, and that's what the dispute is between. George Washington is going to become kind of a national figure during this war. What do you think George Washington's role might be in this specifically? What do you think he might have done in the war? General, okay.
Everybody.
I'll tell you this, he was 21 years old this time.
Okay.
So what do you think he might have done in the war?
When George went
Anything, right? There's no wrong answer, just whatever you think. Lee?
Well, you don't really get like general at age 21 a lot of times, so you might have just been like a soldier.
Might have been a soldier, okay, good. People read about what he's done. Why do you think people would have liked Washington? He became a hero, even though what he's tried to do has not been successful so far. Jarrett?
separate people from the
well,
British and the other
maybe-
British.
They thought he was really brave and courageous because he was led the militia and then
Okay, good, good. Respected his bravery, his courage.
Want to get together.
Very
I
good.
think that's the most.
What questions do you still have about this? Either why the war started or what Washington's role? Just think of a question right now
Does that make sense?
that you might still have about this dispute or about George Washington.
Why did most?
How long was the war? Okay, good.
French.
You might hear that at other stations. What else? Another question, Lee.
How violent was the war?
How violent was the war? Okay, good.
Well, what
Let's get one more before we rotate. Henry.
we talked about?
Why was the South
Okay, good. Why were any forts to the south, the southern areas? Good. You're very good. All right, good things that are happening because of the questioning, I think, in that segment. And there's some things that are still challenges for the students and for me personally. Here are some of the benefits that I see so far with questioning in my classroom. Thinking is driven by questions. I can tell students what I want them to know about the French Indian War and George Washington, but by questioning, I force them to formulate an idea in their head about what might have happened. Critical questioning also forces learners to take a position and use reason. When I ask my students, why did the colonists see George Washington as a hero after several failures, they are forced to put themselves in the position of a colonist and decide for themselves, and also have a reason as to why they think what they think. I also believe critical questioning creates a desire in students to learn more and dig deeper into a topic. When I ask good, thoughtful, higher order questions, it piques my students' interest and causes them to want to find out more. In contrast, if I just tell them the facts, then that's the end of the story and there's nothing more to know. Questioning opens the information up to deeper investigation. Another positive of critical questioning is that it not only reinforces the information from my class, but gives students skills they'll need in high school and beyond. Students that can learn to analyze information, think critically, and ask critical questions themselves will have success in all aspects of their schooling and into their careers. One example of critical questioning in my class this year has to do with the journal entry we're keeping this year. The question for each journal entry is the same every day. How does something from today's history lesson remind you of something about God? So the students have to apply something we talked about in class that day to something they know about God, or something from the lesson that reminds them of something about God. And by asking this simple question at the end of class and giving students a few minutes to write about it, they come up with some of the most amazing answers. It's really neat in class to see that. But as I said, there's challenges still for me and for the students as we're kind of getting into this different way of teaching. One major challenge for me is getting over the desire to tell students what I want them to know. I know the information and I know what I want them to know, but I'm not sure how well I'm preparing them for high school and life if I just give them the answers. It can be frustrating to continue to question the class until they arrive at the answer, but I think they benefit much more from that process. Another challenge that goes along with fighting the urge to tell students the answers is giving students enough wait time. It can be painful to pose a critical question to an 8th grade class and then just be silent long enough to let them wrestle with the question. In moving from telling students to asking questions, I've also had to fight the urge to cover the material. I could cover U.S. history from Jamestown to the War on Terror and tell them all that I want them to know about that. But without questioning, the facts are soon forgotten, and the desire to know more has not been instilled into them. Another big challenge is getting students to ask the critical questions. It can be a struggle for us as adults, as you kind of saw from me in the video. Therefore, we cannot expect that they're going to get it right away either. We're still in the beginning stages of the school year, but my hope is, as we practice this throughout the year, that their ability and mind to pose critical questions will grow.
And when I started my year, I welcomed the students in my classroom and I told them, when you come into this room every day, you're a scientist. You're no longer 7th graders, you're scientists, you're explorers, you're learners, we discover new things, so we're going to act like scientists. So first I want to ask you a few questions to think about. Did you ever ask a lot of questions as a child? Were you the kind of kid who asked why, tugging on your mom's shirt, Dad, give me the answer, I want to know why. If you weren't, you probably know a kid exactly like this. I know quite a few actually, and they're in my class, which is great, I love it. Second question, just think about this to yourself. Were you encouraged to ask questions as a child? In your classroom, at home, or were you kind of brushed off, like, this isn't really important for you to do right now, I have the answers, and you just need to sit there and listen. Third question is, what kind of questions were you asked in school? Did your teachers ever ask you to think at a deeper level? Or again, was it like Franklin mentioned before, just the stand and teach method from the teacher? So a lot of the questions I use in my science class are hook questions, because a lot of times kids come into my classroom and they're like, cells, that's not that exciting. So I try to make questions that get them excited about it, because I think it's really exciting. So hopefully with my attitude and the questions I ask, they kind of catch on and they get just as excited as me. So the hook questions are ones that I actually just used on you. I asked them to engage you into the topic and to get you excited and interested about questioning. One example of the way I've used hook questions is in a lesson about vaccines. I asked the students to think about a time where they had had a vaccine before. I asked them what it felt like. Was it a great experience? Was it a painful experience? Do you think it was helpful to you? And that actually brought them into the topic, because it had something to do with their own lives, and they were interested about it. They wanted to share their experience with me. So that worked really well. Another lesson where I used hook questions was in my intro to the cells, because again, not as exciting to all the 7th graders, but I put questions around the room on a piece of paper, separated the kids into groups, and I had them answer the questions together. So they had a minute to think about all the things they knew and put it down. That was exciting for them, because they had a chance to actually share what they knew, and they knew a lot more than they thought, which was great, and we built on that knowledge as well. Other types of questions I use are critical thinking questions, lots and lots of critical thinking questions. I'm teaching them how to think and how to ask questions as well. So these are deeper level thinking questions. I use Bloom's taxonomy a lot, so that I'm not asking questions just like, what is a microscope, or who invented a microscope, or why are microscopes important? How do we use microscopes today? What would happen if we didn't have microscopes? So they're thinking about possibilities when I ask them those questions. So I'm also asking them questions where they can share their opinion. Students are very happy to share their opinion, not so happy to back up their opinion with what they know. It may be something that mom or dad said at home, so they don't know why. They think it's because mom and dad said it, which is fine. That's how I was as well. But I'm trying to teach them to kind of defend their point and explain, why do you think that way? Why do you have that opinion? So that's really interesting and a really fun part of my lesson. I'm going to show you a video of one of my microscopes lesson. This was when I talked to them about a time when there wasn't microscopes. What was life like when there wasn't microscopes? And the question I asked them was, do you think that there was more cancer back then because they just didn't know about it because they didn't have microscopes, or do you think there's more cancer today because of all the things, the technology and everything? Okay. So think about, this is the question I asked the other classes. I don't think I know the answer to this. This is kind of an open-ended, possibly opinionated question. So think back in the day when they didn't have microscopes. Do you think that there was a lot of cancer back then? Or do you think we just have a lot more today because of the different technology we have? There's nuclear power plants. Things have accelerated. What do you guys think? Do you think there was a lot of cancer back then, or do you think it just increased throughout the years? Vincent?
It increased a lot.
Okay, why do you think it increased?
Because really the only radiation that they were getting was from the sun.
Interesting point. So Vincent's saying the only radiation they were getting was from the sun. So do we get radiation from other things?
We're getting it from these lights, we're getting it from our iPads, we're getting it from
Very good point. Very good point.
from the
Okay, what else? Does anybody have another opinion? Jackson?
She also wanted to say that there's a lot of doctors and stuff that use a lot of radioactivity.
Okay, so there is a lot of radioactivity now than there was. What the boy said earlier was, there is more radiation today But other kids piped in and said, well, I still think that there was cancer back then, but they didn't know it because they didn't have the tools. So it was interesting. We didn't really come to a sound conclusion. We just kind of shared what we thought, and I let them practice defending their opinions. And they thought of a lot of things that I wouldn't even thought of, which is great. Encouraging students to ask questions is probably one of the most challenging things that I go through, but these are the ways that I try to practice getting them to ask me the questions that I'm asking them. I model those questions, so I'm modeling asking them the higher order questions every day. And I'm giving them examples, because I'll ask them, what questions do you still have about this topic? And they'll stare at me like, no, or I don't really want to make the effort to ask you. So I'll kind of push them like, okay, if I were you, I would be asking this question right now. And then they're like, oh, okay, I really don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to ask that right now. So that helps them a lot. And then different ways of communicating questions. I was the kind of kid who thought of 1,000 questions after the class was over. So if I give them time to actually spend thinking about the things that they want to ask, I'm going to have more deeper level questions, more questions in general. So I'm trying to figure out ways still right now, I'm still working on it to incorporate other ways to get them to ask those questions. I just want to end with a quote. I really love quotes just because a lot of more people have a lot more wisdom than me. And Albert Einstein is one of those people that does. And he said, learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is to not stop questioning. And that's what I encourage my kids to do every day. And that's what I try to live for as well. So that is science.
My name is Josh Rubber. I teach 6th grade math at the middle school. It's my 6th year there, and I'm so thankful for Lisa and for Jeannie for bringing us this topic and really letting us dive into it a little bit. It's something that, as a teacher, I think I've always known the benefits of it, but maybe have struggled with incorporating it some myself. As a 6th grade math teacher, the 4 words that I hear every single day, I don't get it, okay? And if you think about it to yourself, that is not really a question. And that's what I tell the students all the time. It is their go-to response for just about anything, because most 6th graders are not at the point where they're used to having to explain things and having to figure things out for themselves and really having to form meaning kind of at a complex level. And so I feel like it's my job in 6th grade, as I know everybody else does, but to take my part along the way to really push them towards maybe diving a little bit deeper, trying a little bit harder, and figuring things out a little bit more. And so that's kind of what my presentation focuses on, is getting students to go from the I don't get it to saying, okay, what is there though that I can use to kind of build my understanding from it. So I have just I have 3 main slides that talk about how it looks in my classroom. So the first one is kind of the old idea of scaffolding. And when it relates to questioning, there's some questions on there that I think are really important. Anytime you get the I don't get it question or the I don't get it response, there's some questions that a teacher can ask. All right, things like, what looks familiar in this problem? Taking them back to something that they already know. Have you done something similar before? Does this look like another problem? And so really activating their thinking to say, okay, maybe I don't know what the answer is, but what is familiar in this problem? Where can I start? They have to have a starting point in order to solving problems. And so a good starting point for students is go back to something that you already know. Go back to something that is familiar to you. And a lot of times when they get that, it seems like they're able to it gives them a starting point and somewhere to go. Some of the challenges, I put challenges on every one because as a teacher, I know that none of this is ever easy. There's always challenges with everything that we do. And so some of the challenges, one is to answer questions with more questions. I try really hard not to ever give a straightforward answer. And as bad as that probably sounds, whatever, but when I have somebody come to me with, well, what do I do next? Well, what do you think you do next? Well, what did you do last? And so that is a question, but it is easy when you get a question to just tell them the answer and move right on. And there are lots of times when I do that, but I try and do that as much as possible. Try not to just demonstrate the right way. Students really need to be able to kind of form some meaning themselves, and certainly there is benefit to them seeing it done properly occasionally, but there comes a point when you can't just demonstrate every single problem. They have to internalize that and put the meaning to it themselves. And then the last one is to help students talk out their thoughts. And that kind of all goes with the scaffolding and the beginning of how to solve that problem. What is there that's already there? Tell me, what do you think about this problem? What do you see in this problem? And trying to really redirect them towards them telling me more things than me telling them. Those are all challenges. These are all things, of course, that I try to do as much as possible, but it's not always easy or practical as a teacher. And so, there's a balance always in what you do. This is in a lesson where I got a whole bunch of I don't know what to do statements, and it was problem solving, and so it was just me kind of getting the class back together. They had been working in small groups. Me getting the class back together and saying, okay, let's as a class dive into this a little bit. And several of you weren't sure what to do. All right, but their way definitely works. But like we talk about a lot of times, that's not the only way to solve the problem, right? There's usually more than one way, all right? So let's start with a couple of basic questions as we solve this problem. What's the important information that the question is asking us, or that's in the problem? What's some of the important information that's in there? Lillian.
To cut the piece of paper 6 times.
Okay, we know we're going to make 6 cuts. So I'm just going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right? We're just going to cut the paper 6 times. All right? What other important information is there? Libby?
You have to cut the paper in half. So
All right, you're cutting the paper in half each time. Good. And how many pieces of paper do we start with?
One.
We just start with 1 piece of paper, right? All right. So think about what you know and what you've told me the question's asking you, and let's see if we can come up with some ways to answer this question without cutting the paper. All right? So imagine for a second that you've got a piece of paper and you cut it in half 1 time. How many pieces of paper will you have? 2. All right. Do you agree with me that after 1 cut, you're going to have 2 pieces of paper? All right, now, what does it tell you you're going to do with those 2 pieces of paper? You're going to stack them on top of each other and cut them again, right? Why? Okay, excellent. He said because they double, right? So when we cut, we have 1 piece of paper. When we cut it once, it doubled into 2 pieces. When we cut it again, it doubled into 4 pieces. Is there a pattern that's forming?
Yes.
Okay, so when we cut it a 3rd time, how many pieces? 8. All right. Now what are we going to do? Double it again.
6.
All right. And again, how many cuts did the problem tell us we were going to make? 6 cuts. Are we there yet?
No.
Okay. And let's just make sure it says, if we reread the question, if he could keep cutting the paper, how many pieces of paper would he have after 6 cuts? So we want to keep going until we get to 6. So what is it going to be after 5 cuts?
32.
And after 6 cuts?
64.
All right, now you girls actually did it, right? And you got 64, so did this way work? All right, did you guys understand how we did that?
Yes, sir.
All right, is there anything I did up here that was really fancy? No. All I did was organize the information that the question was asking, correct?
Sure.
All right, yeah. There's some good and there's some bad, and that's one of the benefits of videotaping ourselves is we see, and unfortunately. We're forced to see our own deficiencies up in front of the class and hear our own voices and things like that. But it does let us know what things are we doing good, and when you see it on video, it just becomes so much more obvious. But it also helps us see the good things. When I got the answer about what to do next, I said, good, why? Because I want them to explain it as much as possible, and trying to get them to put that meaning to it. The more they can explain it to me, and the less I explain, the better. And there's probably some points in there where I'm talking too much myself and not getting them to answer enough questions. One of the things is demonstrating mathematical thinking. Obviously, in math, that's what we're looking for. Some of the questions that go along with that. What information is given in the problem? I think you heard that in the last. What was the important thing? What do you already know that can help you solve the problem? What's the important information in the question? And that was one of the things. It's just a jumping off point. It's somewhere for them to start to put meaning to it without me just telling them what to do. It puts the burden on them to figure out what to do next. Some of the challenges that go along with that: rephrasing student questions, helping students develop complete thoughts. Don't just tell them how to do the problem, provide the framework for them to explain it for themselves. And so, to me, those are all really important things. The more the students have to take ownership for it and explain it and all those types of things, and my job then just becomes, how do I get them to do that? How do I get that out of them? And so the questions that I ask are vital then for kind of the responses that I'm going to get. Student voice, and it goes just along with everything else. It's no longer what Franklin talked about of me explaining things. There are always benefits, it's never all or one, but there's benefits to me demonstrating a problem and showing how to do it. But the more the students have to put the meaning to it and say the words and make it real enough for them to be able to explain it, the better. And so students must engage in the conversation. Questions that I ask to try to get them to do that, like when I said the why question to that student, or I say, why did you do it that way? Could it be done another way? Tell me how you got that answer. All of those things force them to put more meaning on it. They also take more time, more effort, all those things. And so that's part of the challenges of it. Providing students enough time to process the questions and respond. Creating an environment that's safe for students to be working, or to be wrong, I'm sorry. It's safe for students to be wrong. To me, that's really important. The students have to know that they don't have to have the right answer, that I'm not expecting that. Part of learning is making mistakes, just like our principal reminds us all the time that we're not going to be perfect either, and it frees us to try more things and do more things, and I think I need to pass that on to the students. Last thing is redirect and lead with questions that can help the student explain their own, in their own words. And so that's just kind of the ways that I use it in math, and some of the things that they've talked about have helped me focus in on those things, and the videotaping and all that just makes you really aware really quickly, and so that's been a huge benefit. So that's my part. I think Jeannie is going to close us out here.
Circles. This video clip is the very first time we've done it. We're talking about the Good Samaritan, and this is just a short clip. We actually went on for 25 minutes, and it was a really engaging question. They hadn't done it before, so you'll see me being overly enthusiastic about their answers, just kind of give you a hint, because I'm really trying to encourage them to take risks as learners.
I think it's like a kind of social class thing. So a guy may have been on the bottom, and then the priest and the other person probably thought that they're too good for him. They just kind of left.
And why would God let an innocent person be hurt? Because I don't think the Samaritan did anything wrong. He just got hurt.
Okay, remember the Samaritan, was the Samaritan the one that was hurt? Okay, he was hurt?
No.
The Samaritan's the one who did what? What did the Samaritan do?
Why would he let the innocent
Who? Why would who let the innocent person? Why would God allow the innocent? Okay. So does God allow people to be hurt? And why if he does?
Well, being robbed and hurt like that is kind of bad and like a hard way to learn something. But maybe God might, if it teaches him a lesson, maybe it's for the good.
Yeah, like maybe he he was trying to take a drastic measure and show that like even a man getting beat up and robbed, and you're supposed to like maybe going back to the other one about the priest not liking the man, maybe he done something bad to him or something. Like, and Jesus says that we should turn the other cheek and not seek revenge. So maybe that's why, because God wanted to show that even no matter who it is, you should help him.
Maybe God wanted to.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh, sorry. Maybe God wanted to see like who would set the example, who would do it or not, and see if like the Samaritans truly listened to the word of God, and the Levite and priest just passed by.
I think that people ask that all the time, like, why does this happen to me and stuff like that. And so I think that God knows everything that's going to happen, and He has a reason for everything that's going to happen. It might be something that's going to be good that happens to you, or it could be something that's going to be bad.
Yeah, kind of like what Vinny said, probably a test, because through life we have to take many tests of faith and stuff. And so if you're half dead, robbed on the side of the road, and you see highly respected people walk by you that believe in God, like, you'd think, well, how come they didn't help me when they are taking lessons on helping people and preaching the word of God, and you have a person that's not highly respected in, like what Chris said, social group, and help you.
So as Christians, we should be different, right? We should be showing God's love to people.
Yeah, no matter how high or low you are, and whatever job you do, you should help out people.
You guys are doing a phenomenal job. Keep it up. This is amazing. Great work. Keep going. You got it.
I feel like with people in the inner circle, it really made like people on the outside sort of want to get involved because we're doing all the discussing and they're out here.
Yes.
I kind of like that because like with the burning seat, it just made everybody else involved.
Okay, so you like that whole setup, so that kind of worked for you? Okay, good. And if something didn't work for you, like, I'm not afraid for you to say, it's really fun. Go ahead.
I like how that, like, we didn't have to like worry about like what other people thought about like what we thought about it.
Okay.
So like we could express what we thought.
So you felt safe after we kind of got over those minutes of, oh, this is different. Okay, perfect. Good. Someone else? Go ahead.
Well, it felt like a little bit strange at first,
Yeah.
but like once we got like going, we were into it more. It was like really good because we got to like hear other people's opinions on things.
Okay. And so you had a chance to sort of practice that and listen to other people. Okay. Go ahead.
I think it was a really good way to do Bible class. They just make you think about the Bible more and not just, I don't know, I just think I liked it a lot more.
Okay, so this is sort of a snapshot of what discussion looked like and then trying to get them to ask those critical questions. So in conclusion, is this whole idea of questioning as part of comprehension requires intentional and strategic teaching. It just doesn't occur. We have to plan for it to happen. It takes time, practice, reflection, and evaluation, all things that we don't have time for, but we have to make time for in order to create real change. And then I came up with sort of an equation, even though I'm not necessarily a math person, but this whole idea of reflection and evaluation of teaching practice plus powerful questioning really equals visible and critical thinking for all learners, because that's our goal. So we really want our students to be critical, and we want them to visibly think. That's sort of our big purpose. This is the beginning of our study. We are looking at questioning, then we're moving into discussion, and then we're collecting data along the year, and then our goal is to actually write up what we learn about this teaching practice and questioning is related to comprehension.
professional development did you do before you started actually asking them to make the questions?
Well, I'll start, and then they can tell you how they felt about it.
Okay.
So I did. So basically, after interviewing teachers, Lisa started. We created a whole plan for the year in terms of things that we're going to focus on. We're starting with questioning, then we're moving to discussion, then we're evaluating text, and we've got sort of a whole plan. But it was 30 minutes, and so I kind of came in. We did Kylene Beer's Tea Party, where we looked at an article on questioning, and then we actually investigated it. And then I introduced a tool, and I was like, oh, here you go. You're going to get to video and really analyze your questioning. And so I think there was a little bit of stress of having to figure that out. And I want them to speak to that, but not a lot. So our whole goal is to sort of do a snapshot of something and then to actually learn it. And then we really believe in a coaching model where Lisa and I will be in classrooms coming alongside helping teachers try these things out. Because in some cases, these are new. So in the case of Socratic Circles, I'm actually demonstrating it for the first time. So first period, I demonstrated it. Second period was a planning session, so we talked about it. And then third period, the Bible teacher actually presented it. So we really feel like long-term change occurs with professional development and then trying it out. But I want you all to speak to that because it affected you in very good ways, I think.
Was for us, and watching yourselves, like Franklin said earlier, it's not the most comfortable thing a teacher does, but it did really make you hear that you don't give kids much time to answer, or you answer too quickly for them, and so it's really useful in thinking about going a little deeper, because we want to go deeper, but we may not realize we're stopping it from going deeper with our own practices.
It's awkward and uncomfortable, but the way we're doing the professional development is kind of an ongoing thing, and they're continually coming back. And instead of just one session meeting and then you're free to do it, it's really been helpful to see yourself, have feedback, ask questions, and have it just kind of a continual process.
They too. I do think that for the teachers, the video piece was stressful. But what I found is the more one or two did that and then talked about it and collaborated together, that sort of this is a scary thing was reduced. And I probably said this in my piece, but this is to me one of the most profound things is the way the conversation in our hallways and in my office have changed. Because I think most of my faculty really are lifelong learners. They really are embracing this as a process for them. And just being able to talk about it or to show via test, does that change this question? Does this, is this checking for understanding on a deeper level? It's just been phenomenal every day. It just seems like there's something new that we're having a conversation about. And I again feel it's pervasive. It's just not, oh, this teacher, or it's, oh, just the English department gets it. It's everybody. So I hope I love that.
And we have those tools, so like if you want to see any of the tools we're developing, we're glad to share those. That's part of our goal too, as part of this project, is to develop analytical tools to help teachers think to change practice. Go ahead, Josh.
One of the things I really appreciated about it was the fact that, she said it was 30 minutes, and even though, we don't want to give up time, and at the beginning of the year when we're all so busy anyway, and it was just enough to get us thinking about the topic. It was just enough information to get started. And then the thing that I really appreciated from both of them was they said, just do it and don't worry about what it looks like. Don't worry about if it's good or bad. Don't worry about just get it done and let's go from there. And so I think that piece was really important to know that we didn't have to do something right or different or anything else, but just hearing that it was okay for it to just come as it was. And so I appreciated that part of it.
I think in the beginning you said something about working with a peer. So do you get to choose who your peer is that you're working with or assign? Or?
We talked a lot about that because that's really scary because you want to make sure you're safe with whoever you're working with. Even in my own writing, I've made some mistakes in that. So I think that's really critical. But go ahead.
We've done it 2 different ways already this year. The first time we did videos and we watched with people who didn't teach our same subjects because we thought there'd be real value in someone outside your subject area watching your video with you. And then the last time we did pair up with someone in our own area because we felt like that's a different set of responses. So for 5th grade at least, we've been kind of mixing it up who we work with to get different viewpoints and different priorities maybe addressed.
I didn't like them watching me. Oh, I was like, oh, what does that sound like? Oh, I really was embarrassed, but the person I worked with was really kind and was giving me encouraging feedback and also telling me what I need to work on. And it's I don't know. I feel like it's easier to work on things when people are telling you you did this one thing right. Like, oh, okay, I did this right. Now I'm gonna get better on this. And I think that's how our entire environment is at Lipscomb. I've never felt like you're always doing something wrong. I feel like you're doing a lot of things right. Let's work on this, and I'm more willing to work. I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't know. I feel like it's a very positive environment. I'm not really scared to talk about my teaching.
It is very intimidating to watch the video yourself, much less with somebody else.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, the person I watched it with and I both found ourselves apologizing the entire time. I'm so sorry, or explaining ourselves, or whatever. But having done it once, it does get a little bit easier, I guess.
Or there's
after the
things you
second
see
time.
on there. I watched a clip of me, and I watched a kid sit there with this cord twirling it the whole entire time. And I never saw that. Like, I was so involved in what I was doing, and I'm thinking, why didn't I tell them to stop doing that? But I didn't because I didn't see it. So I thought, okay, next time I'm going to make sure that I'm a little more aware of some of the things people are doing. I mean, he was still on task, but he's like twirling this thing in the middle of the video session, which obviously I didn't show that clip. So, anything else that you're thinking or want to know?
No, I find this very valuable for my teacher candidates. If they were to see that you were involved in this type of professional development, how they're not going to stop learning once they get out into the field. They need to see what you go through to continue being a great teacher. So, thank you for doing this.
It's funny that you say that because I worked with a colleague on this, and the colleague asked me, hey, what grade would you give me? And then I gave that colleague a grade, and then he said, what grade would you give yourself? And I said, I'd give myself a B. And he goes, why not an A? And I said, because I never want to get an A, because I'm always learning and trying to get it right. When I have an A, then I'm probably going to stop teaching. Because there's always things you can do better if you're truly being reflective and evaluative. So, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.